Good evening, 49er faithful. Training camp has begun, ladies and gentlemen. We are your hosts. As always, I'm Rob Schuh. That's Randon McMahon. This is Between Two Beards, the show that you know, the show that you love. It's perfectly timed this week to talk about day one of 49ers training camp. How are you feeling, Randon? Are you amped because of this new energy, this renewed source of material, or is it just, sort of another boring day on the podcast?
I think just like anybody else, like as much as I'm like, oh, it's just, training camp, no pads were on. I was shuffling for as many Trey Lance throws as I could possibly find. Just excited, just pumped, and football's back, in a real way. I mean, obviously they're not hitting yet, but it's just nice to see, and nice to see some things here and there. There's other things, like Kinlaw looks in shape, like, all these kind of things like that kind of get you fired up. So I was definitely hitting the refresh button on the Twitskis pretty hard today.
Yes, it is. It is that time where you get a little bit of news, and I'm like you. I'm like a sponge. I'm trying to soak up every little bit that I can get. I'm obviously up in Portland, Oregon. You're out in Texas. Neither one of us was at camp today. We'll see if we have an opportunity to attend any of those sessions. I might at some point. But I am like everyone else out there. I'm trying to get every scrap of news that might be there. I'm biting, clawing, kicking, and scratching to get those pieces of news. And I thought that there was a lot of stuff that came across. You did point out, we want to call out for all those viewers that are watching at the moment, watching the video, that it was a non-padded practice. This whole first week is going to be as such. Today's session was reported as just under 90 minutes. They're out there with the helmets on and jerseys and shorts, right? They are not hitting. There's no contact. That won't start until next week. And yet, there's still a lot of information that we can glean from this session. A lot of positives, as Randon mentioned as well. And we'll go through one by one and check those off for you. But we got to get to some of this excitement here in the chat, Randon. The people love to talk to us. They absolutely do. We got Treasure Kisses, Swan Song, Sneakerheads here on the channel. Melvin coming in. Rob, from what I heard, Sudfeld has been tearing it up in camp. I was really worried about our backup quarterback position. Do you think that maybe Nate is going to actually be a good backup option? It's a little early. We may have to pump the brakes there on Nate killing it, but that's what was reported, that he looked really good today. I think he was 7 for 7 in the 11-on-11 drill, so that he completed every pass. Primarily checkdowns, a lot of looking towards tight ends today, but did hit one deep pass for Sudfeld, and it was encouraging at a bare minimum. I'm still not thrilled with the idea of Trey Lance and Nate Sudfeld as our only quarterbacks. I don't know if this one day changed your mind, Randon, but I'm feeling a little bit better.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's just camp. It's good. I mean, now that Sudfeld is getting more than like 3 passes a week, like where him and Josh Rosen last year were like splitting, the leftover scraps, like he's actually going to get some reps. And so we're going to have a better idea of what he can bring. They obviously paid him the money. A lot of people say he's intelligent. He's 6'6", like he's a big dude and can throw the football. By all accounts, he has a pretty decent and pretty ball when it comes out of his hand. So I'm fine with that. And I thought there was an interesting quote today. I don't know if it was today or yesterday, but from Shanahan, and he said, if we were building this offense around, a running quarterback, we would have had a running quarterback backup, even though Sudfeld can sprint the 40. But we think Trey Lance can throw the football, and that's what we want to do. And so I think having Nate Sudfeld as a backup actually shows more trust in Trey to be able to run a traditional offense rather than just running him up the gut 18 times.
I thought the same thing. I took the very same takeaway from that quote from Kyle Shanahan. And I chuckled a little bit when he was like, hey, don't sleep on Nate's wheels, man. He may be the fastest in there. Well, I went back and checked on his 40 time. I mean, we're talking a 4.9 40. So I don't think he's the fastest one in that room. If he is, we have problems. But it gives you a sense of what Kyle Shanahan views Trey Lance to be. Not primarily a mobile quarterback who's going to use his legs, but someone who's going to operate from within the pocket and be able to add to that because of his mobility, because of his legs to extend plays. But that's right, that then you would feel comfortable with Nate Sudfeld, who is not a running quarterback, because he also will operate from within the pocket. You're not shifting a big move from one quarterback to the next. It brings in a little bit of doubt about what Kyle Shanahan said last season about all the trouble of switching from Jimmy to Trey. Right? He seems to be contradicting that point here, but I'm not going to fault him. I did want to bring in, because it's relevant here in Portland as well, Tom. Tom Jensen up in Seattle says, trade Jimmy for a weather machine. I'm melting. I think the heat wave is hitting everybody. Melvin sharing that as well. I hear you, man. It's 106 here. I got a swamp cooler. That's rough. 106 is nothing to sneeze at. Hottest I've been in was 117 out in Stockton, California. Goodness gracious, that was unpleasant. I'm guessing out there in Texas, you have seen some things there, Randon.
Yeah, it's been over 100 and I think 100 degrees for like 4 weeks straight now.
You're like, welcome to my world.
I know, it's been bad. And like, now you're just kind of used to it. Like for a full week last week, it was over 110. Like it was just brutal. Oof. And so, yeah, selling cars and that ain't fun. You drink lots of water. Yeah, yeah, it's pretty brutal. And normally you get some like weather here. Normally you get some rain, or even if it's 95-degree rain, it's still rain. And we haven't, like, it's drizzled like once in the past 3 months, like for 30 minutes, and that's about it. So
man, I'm telling you, Dustin Kohler, another person out there in Texas, say hundreds every day out there. Sean 951 been traveling a lot lately. 122 in Arizona last week. That's brutal. Speaking of
that's the dry heat. No,
that's dry heat. It's not the same. I'm here in 100-degree heat in Portland, and this is not a dry heat. This is absolutely not a dry heat in Portland. Emiliano coming in to post that, yes, the 49ers did promote that long completion by Nate Sudfeld on their social media account. So if you want to see that long pass from Nate Sudfeld, head over to Twitter. Check that out from the 49ers social media. And have to call out the newest sneakerhead here on the channel, Brian Berquist, coming in, the newest sneakerhead. Welcome to the channel. And we have a special guest in the chat as well. Rohan coming in, who was there at 49ers practice today, giving some great coverage. I saw that we've got to be concerned about his thumbs at this point. A little too much finger action was going on. May have a little finger fatigue at this point. May have a day off tomorrow. Wish you the best in getting back out there. No, we will see continued coverage from the likes of Rohan and others out there bringing us phenomenal stuff like we got today. Let's jump into that stuff that we did get from all the reporters out there. This one is hearkening back to yesterday, but it feels worth talking about because obviously this is our first program together, Randon, since that opening presser. Shanahan and Lynch began talking about how this is Trey's team. I cannot imagine anyone, after hearing that presser, still saying to themselves, no, Jimmy Garoppolo is going to stick around and be the starting quarterback of this team. That feels like it's been put to rest at this point. I believe this is a positive and long overdue because I think Trey needed that support. He needs to own that locker room. I'm seeing this as a wildly positive thing to come away from that presser with.
Yeah, unless you're the former Jets coffee getter that's prominent on Twitter, you pretty much think that, yeah, this is it. And then that's what we've been asking for. You know, we've been asking for full confidence, and that's what they gave, and we're ready to go. And I think the fact that Sudfeld, who maybe a lot of people don't have confidence in as a backup, is even more confidence in Trey. Like, do you even know I don't know the backup for Russell Wilson or Patrick Mahomes or any of these guys. Like, you know, like, I mean, I do, but I mean, it's like, you don't really care, right?
Right.
But it's just, so like, it's the same thing. Like if they're gonna unless Trey is injured, they're gonna let him go through the good, the bad, and the ugly. So, which is what they need. Like he needs to go through the lumps. But as far as, you know, going in the press conference, I really loved it. You know, like, hey, like he's our guy. You know, thank you, Jimmy, for all that you did, and you know, I hope you have a good, like, you know, start to your season, but it just ain't going to be here. Like,
yeah, right.
You know?
I do think that I also took away that, hey, number one, Trey is like unquestionable QB1. And that's fantastic. I've been waiting to hear that for a while. If you listen to Kyle Shanahan all the way back to the owners conference, the owners meeting, he said basically the same thing, less emphatically. People took him less seriously, and there were still other reports that contradicted it out there, so it was easy to ignore the news. This feels like you can't ignore what was said. This was crystal clear, but they also did talk about Jimmy Garoppolo, and the one piece that stood out to me is that, yes, Jimmy seems wildly available for trade right now. If I were to read into the tea leaves of what I saw there, it's a fire sale. If it's a car lot, they got a bunch of those dudes out there with the flailing arms promoting some type of a sale that's coming up. So I think they're going to be flexible and willing to trade Jimmy. But then you hear the one sticking point that makes my heart flutter a little bit, makes me a little bit nervous, because I don't know what would happen if we get down to the wire and he's still on the roster around that cut down time where his salary may become guaranteed. It was the quote that says, "We also just can't give away one of the better quarterbacks in the league. Make him available for no reason," Shanahan said. That was the one contradictory statement that made it seem as if this organization is still holding out some hope that they may get more for Jimmy Garoppolo than it seems feasible to get at this point. And that gives me heart palpitations. Any nervousness in hearing that, or do you think it just has to be said by Shanahan that we're not giving him away?
I think they just don't want to cut him so Seattle can pick him up.
Yeah.
Like they're just waiting to the last opportune moment. I think you can almost talk a team into it. Like, hey, what if we give you you give us a fourth or a third? If you lose Jimmy to free agency, somebody's going to pay him some money, and then you're going to get that pick back. So it's almost like a free rental at that point. Maybe something along those lines. But I don't think so. Like, to go next season with a $25 million quarterback as your backup is dumb. And then not only that is then it doesn't allow Trey Lance to have the confidence to go through lumps, right? Like, he throws one interception, you're hearing all the Jimmy stands,
right,
scream Jimmy like they were screaming for Trey last season, or vice versa. It just makes no sense to me. You have to know that the team is his, and they've emphatically said it. So you have to back it up with actions, because actions speak louder than words.
Absolutely. You saw just what you're referring to in Pittsburgh today. I watched it unfold on Twitter, where a beat reporter shared Mitchell Trubisky throws his first incompletion and someone in the crowd is immediately yelling for the rookie to be put in, right? It wouldn't take much if Jimmy were still on this roster. If he had been out at practice, Trey only had 2 incompletions as I saw it. And yet you could have imagined someone standing up in that crowd and calling for Jimmy at that point. A couple of great comments that I want to bring in here. Rohan coming in here first and foremost with actual eyewitness accounts here. Said, saw Sudfeld today, looked good, looked for the check down a lot, held the ball too long 1 to 2 times, but some good passes too, like the 50-yard touchdown to Malik Turner, who does seem like maybe the odds-on favorite to be that 6th wide receiver coming out of the gate. And then he says, definitely much better than Brock Purdy right now. So if you're seeing the backup quarterback competition as being between Brock Purdy, Mr. Irrelevant, and Nate Sudfeld coming in there as the savvy veteran holding down the spot, it would seem like Nate is holding it down as of right now. I can't see anything that leads me to believe anything other than us going into the season with Trey, number 1, Nate Sudfeld, number 2. I'm going to keep that competition open for now, but as I see it right now, that seems to be the way it's playing out.
Yeah, I think their goal is to put Purdy on the practice squad.
Yeah,
just because then maybe Sudfeld gets a chance to make more money as a backup next year, and that way you have a cheap alternative. But yeah, I mean, we saw how many throws that Sudfeld got last year with, it's just not enough to Purdy's not going to get enough throws to prove himself in my opinion. So, unless Sudfeld is absolutely god awful, it's going to be Nate Sudfeld and Trey Lance.
Right. It just seems that way unless Purdy can really show something or Sudfeld looks awful. I agree that is the way it will play out. And John B bringing in this fact that I saw today as well. The new betting odds for Jimmy Garoppolo's landing spots as far as a trade from the 49ers to another team goes, the Giants have leapt out as the favorite at the moment as plus 200. This one is admittedly interesting to me. As far as I understand it, the Giants don't have the cap space available to absorb Jimmy Garoppolo's salary in its entirety. So it would require some combination of the 49ers or Jimmy Garoppolo or both agreeing to restructure that contract and eat some portion of it for the Giants. You could also get creative in sending players back and forth in it to equal out those salaries a little bit. Potentially the Giants send back a Tyrod Taylor, who was already connected with Anthony Lynn when he was there as the head coach of the Chargers. I would love that. I looked at Tyrod Taylor as a potential backup quarterback candidate to bring in prior to the Nate Sudfeld signing, but I'm skeptical of it. I look at all of these teams where Jimmy could get traded, and I've just got to admit, none of them feel like a lock at this point.
The Browns already said Jacoby Brissett's their starter.
Right.
But is that coach posturing like the Niners have done? I think the Giants, you're looking at this as fact, like, okay, Daniel Jones ain't it. They didn't extend him.
Right.
They would have to send Tyrod Taylor back. I don't know if the fact that Tyrod, how much guaranteed money is it that the Giants would have to eat if they just cut him? I'd have to look that up, but
I think it's $8 million of his $11 million over the 2-year contract is guaranteed. So it will be some portion of that as the dead money.
Yeah, so you're looking at that, okay, and then to upgrade your backup quarterback from Sudfeld to Tyrod Taylor is worth the $2 million to cut Sudfeld is probably. So yeah, I mean it could work. It could get going in that direction. It just depends what the Giants want to do, because either way you look at it, if they believe Jimmy Garoppolo is the quarterback of the future and then they could build a team around him, then you can extend him. If they think that he's a perfect bridge quarterback for whoever they draft next season, because that draft class is supposed to be pretty large, then they can, separate those two, that money into next season and have that bridge player, or 3 seasons if they so choose. So, I mean, I think there's multiple options and they can do whatever they want to do. I mean, sometimes teams make the cap irrelevant at some points, with how creative they can get.
Yeah. And I mean, honestly, I do think that creativity may be key for the San Francisco 49ers. It's basic supply and demand. And when that QB carousel came to a screeching halt and the 49ers were stuck with a recovering Jimmy Garoppolo still on the roster after that shoulder surgery, demand is way down. Some of these teams would jump back into the fray as soon as you cut Jimmy Garoppolo. But as he is dangled out there as trade bait, some of these teams may not believe the 49ers in this game of chicken. They may think eventually you will be forced to cut him. There's just no way you're going to pay him $24 additional million to be your backup for this season. So maybe they think the Niners are going to blink. I look at all these teams, Cleveland denying it, the rest of the teams not having the cap space available. If you're only trading him for a 4th or a 5th rounder, do you really want to eat $5 or $10 million worth of salary to buy a later round draft pick? It gets confusing. And I will admit, if this thing comes down to the wire and the 49ers are staring at that hard deadline, which is somewhere around August 29th, August 30th, where Jimmy Garoppolo's salary becomes guaranteed and no one is willing to trade for him, I'm not sure how they will act, whether it will be erratically in deciding to keep him as some sort of a backup or do the smart thing, what feels like the smart thing, in releasing him at that point and freeing up the entire $25 million. It's something to keep your eye on if the trade doesn't happen.
For me, I think the trade is solely based on Jimmy's agent at this point, right? I mean, because he's going to have to wheel and deal the money to make it fit and do all this kind of stuff like that. Obviously, he wants Jimmy to make as much money as possible. And then, you have that Sam Bradford effect. Like, nobody wishes ill will on anybody, but if somebody goes down, like, he's the number one option, especially on a contending team. And so, like, then you get all the value that you want, and they absorb all the contract, and it's the best scenario. Like, I know that they're saying like they're going to do what's right by Jimmy Garoppolo, but I think they also are going to do what's right by them. Like, there's no need to cut him. Right?
Yeah.
Like, it showed what they did today. Like, he did his throwing program before any of the players were on the field by himself. And then he went to the weight room, and that's why everybody else was practicing. So he wasn't a distraction. He was still getting his work in. He's still healthy. So it's just all those types of things I think they're going to continue doing. He's still at the facility, so he's not getting fined. Like, there's really no need to cut him right now. They've already said Trey, he's getting all the reps.
Right.
Like, it really makes no sense to cut him right now unless, because what if something does happen?
That's right. Absolutely true.
and then you can get a first round, like a Bradford first or a second round pick for him, or a second that's conditional or something like that. Like, those are long shot odds, but nobody thought Bradford was worth a first round pick, but that team got desperate.
That's
So, it can happen.
That's just it. All of a sudden, that demand gets skewed wildly because you do get desperate in that situation. Sean9519ers had that comment earlier as well, on the same page with you, saying, Rob Schuh, they are just waiting for next week when the pads come on to see if any starter goes down with injury. Happens every year. There are injuries widely throughout the NFL. Happens every training camp. And if it does happen to a starting caliber quarterback, especially on a team that views themselves as playoff caliber, they will become desperate. Garoppolo's price will go back up to a reasonable starting quarterback compensation in that trade. And there is no reason, it would seem, for the 49ers to rush that, right? Keep Jimmy around. To your point, he's throwing on the side. There is really no risk to him at this point. He wants to be traded as well. It's not like he wants to incur an injury and sit on $7.5 million. No matter where he ends up, I would expect him to make more than that injury guarantee on his next contract, even if he does renegotiate.
Yeah, I mean, it's just smart business. Like, okay, all the fans, like, we got what we wanted. Like, the emphatic that Trey Lance is our guy. Like, let's just let his agent and the Niners do their thing. And I think, and then if you cut him like the last minute, like by the time he signs and gets into camp, like I know he's a vet, but yeah, he's gonna know only a little bit of the offense. He's not going to be prepared for the first couple of weeks. He'll still probably start because they'll need him, but it'll take time for him to get ramped up, especially if he goes to a contender. There's teams though that could pay a pretty price, right? What if Tom Brady goes down? Like, Tampa Bay is trying to win with the signing of Julio Jones. Like, you could get a fortune for Jimmy Garoppolo at that point. Like, so it's good just to pump the brakes and let the agents do his job,
Absolutely. Just bringing in the relevant information as I see it. Did I miss that comment? There it is. Rohan coming in with the Giants eating around $1.5 million if they trade him now. So that would be because of whatever signing bonus Tyrod Taylor was given up front. The Giants would eat about $1.5 million. So I would guess that puts the 49ers at about taking on about $7 million in salary. So if you're sending out Jimmy and the Giants can eat 5 and you can take back 7, now you're at 12. There's another 12 million that needs to be divvied up somehow. Maybe Jimmy eats a portion of that. Maybe the Niners eat a portion of that. Maybe the Giants clear more cap space and eat a larger portion of that themselves. But something to keep an eye on. Did also want to talk about the players that came to the podium yesterday. Most notably to me was just a comment from Juice that I wanted to bring to the table that I found fascinating. They asked both George Kittle and Kyle Juszczyk about, hey, are you going to be glad? It seems that Kyle Shanahan has put this thing to rest. It is Trey Lance's team from here on out. Will you be glad to not have to answer that question anymore? And Juice came out with the best line, I thought, wherein he said, yeah, because I was tired of people telling me I was wrong after I told them who I thought was going to start. Imagine that. The goal of some fan to be like, dude, Juice, give me the inside track, man. Just give me the straight dope. Just tell me, who's it going to be? Is it going to be Jimmy? Is it going to be Trey? And Juice is like, dude, we're going to turn it over to Trey. It's Trey's time. We're moving on from Jimmy. You heard him say goodbye to the team. And then the fan is like, man, who's your source? Like, are you sure? Are you sure?
What do you
about
know?
that?
You're a fullback.
I've heard on Twitter that like it's going to be Jimmy, and I'm going with that over you, Juice, because I just don't know where you're getting your information from. That's wild to me that fans are that opinionated about this Lance Garoppolo chaos that they would believe whatever source they may have over a player themselves.
It's so crazy, the national media, how it flipped as well. It's like, oh, so we can't write this smut anymore that we don't know what we're talking about, and we have to name Trey Lance the starter. Okay, well, there goes our Boilermaker topic. Good thing training camp started. We have actually football to talk about now.
Yes, always a positive. All right, we will hit this quickly, but we've already talked about Jimmy, so we won't linger on it too long. But we do want to officially call out that Jimmy G did pass his team physical today. And so what that means is he is primed to be traded or released and would no longer trigger that $7.5 million injury guarantee as it stands right now. He is recovered and could be traded at any point. That doesn't necessarily mean that a trade for Jimmy Garoppolo is happening tomorrow. And these quotes felt relevant from Kyle Shanahan's interview with Tim Kawakami of The Athletic in speaking on Jimmy. He says, this is the business part of the league. And whether it's tomorrow, whether it's a couple weeks from now, whether it's right before week 1, I think our team will be in a good spot. And I think Jimmy will be in a good spot, most likely somewhere else. Asked whether he's going to practice while he's there or whether we will see what we saw today, he says, I think anything's possible, but that would surprise me right now. So that gives me relief that even if this thing drags on towards week 1, which would, again, I would start to get nervous as long as Jimmy remains on the sideline, just throwing there, just getting ready for the inevitable trade. As long as we don't have the drama of him taking practice reps, I'm fine with him lingering around until closer to week 1.
Yeah, I'm not sure 100% on the rules, but you got to assume that a team can send a scout if they're interested, right?
Right.
To go watch him throw in his private throwing area. You're not going to gain anything by watching Jimmy throw footballs in preseason, in camp and preseason. Like, you have tape for that. So, like, your scout would go there and check. Oh, hey, okay, yeah, the shoulder looks good. All right, we're good to go. We have all the tape that we need. I'll let my team know. Like, there's really no need for him to even be on the field other than hhis rehab at this point.
Yes, we just want things to continue to stack days in the correct direction. Yeah. Keep him healthy, keep all the news positive, and not have him out there having videos and pictures of him competing with Trey. That is not what I want in the least. I want him as a sideline distraction here. Well, another piece of news comes to a close today with the 49ers finally releasing Dee Ford. The move does save the 49ers $1.12 million against the 2022 cap. I think that puts them right above $5 million in available money. You would assume most of that, if not all of it, is going to be eaten up by the eventual Deebo Samuel extension that happens. This was a long time coming. I assume that it took this long because the 49ers needed to allow him to pass some type of a physical to avoid any type of additional dead money or injury guarantee. I tell you what, I'll be surprised if Dee Ford is ever able to play a full season again. It feels like the type of situation someone will take a flyer on him, pay him a much lower salary, more like a vet minimum deal, and it'll be a prove-it situation. But with the lingering back issues, I just struggle to see him really contributing for any team.
Yeah, I mean, it's sad because I had so much hopes, and that team in 19, when it was at its peak with Ford and Bosa on the both sides, it was ridiculous, that defensive line, and so I think they've been looking for that ever since. Armstead goes on the inside. If Kinlaw can get healthy, he's no DeForest Buckner at the moment, but they're trying to make that defensive line better than it was before, and him just never really to be able to find it. And you still saw it last year when he was able to get like 1 or 2 snaps. Like, okay, he's still got that pop, but it's just never been able to still stay healthy. And it's time to move on. And yeah, you went out and shot your shot, and he helped enough in the playoffs, like that to make that run worth it. But he definitely got more money per sack than I've ever seen anybody else make.
Yeah, more money per sack, more money per game played. He, in his time here, I think he only appeared in 17 or 18 games, somewhere in that range. And yeah, it was a paltry number of sacks versus a substantial number of millions of dollars that Dee Ford was paid. You can take any of the monikers for Ford, which I am a gearhead, so I'm well aware of. Found on road dead, driver returned on foot. There are a lot of them out there for Ford that you could attribute, but I like to say, hey, it's an injury situation. I feel for a guy like that. I'm all for a little bit of lighthearted humor, but I like to follow it up by saying that it is just that lighthearted ribbing. I wish him nothing but the best going forward. I can only imagine how difficult it is to try and rehab yourself on a continual basis. I imagine he wanted to be out there, wanted to contribute with his teammates. I do think that this is a necessary emotional departure from that mistake. If you let him stay on the roster one more year because you say to yourself, well, the dead money is already there, we're only saving $1 million by cutting him, even if he's only able to rack up 3 sacks like he did last season, you might argue for $1 million difference, that's worth it. I think you have to cut the cord here. I like this move. I wish him nothing but the best wherever he ends up next.
Yeah, I mean, they stacked the defensive line for a reason. So I think this was in the thing all along, and it's just sad. I mean, yeah, these guys are millionaires and whatever, but it's still their dream to play football. Like nobody wants to be injured, and he's probably going to feel these back problems like his whole life. You found out today in a different sport, but Mike Trout, arguably the best baseball player in the world, has a back disease or a back issue that's going to be lingering for probably the rest of his career. And so when you see a guy at the pinnacle of his game that Dee Ford was, and then we trade for him, and then he just never really gets healthy, and you're going to see a player like Trout go through it constantly where it's going to be an issue. It's tough. Like I feel for the guy. Like you want, as a fan of somebody who watches sports, like I want to watch greatness continue.
Right.
Like, I want to see Mike Trout be good. I wanted to see Dee Ford and Bosa opposite each other for the full part of the contract. Like it really is frustrating when those happen or careers get cut short. You could say like Megatron, like had so many, like got hit so many times, had triple coverage, like his body just couldn't take it anymore, and he retired early. Patrick Willis, like there's tons of guys who get lingering injuries and stuff like that and have to call it quits. And you don't really get to see the full greatness of their career of what could have been. And it's just kind of sad.
It is definitely a shame. John B. Strider 3006 coming in. Rob, we can only hope that Drake Jackson, and Charles Omenihu can combine to be what Ford was in that playing time. Interesting note today, that sort of NASCAR package as it was now includes Omenihu in the role that was for Arden Key last year. So you could see a scenario where you have Omenihu contributing sacks on the interior, much like Arden Key did. If Drake Jackson can be that fast edge guy opposite of Bosa on the obvious third down passing situations, he could help raise that pass rush efficiency to levels similar to what we saw in 2019 when you did have a healthy Dee Ford. I think having that speed edge rusher opposite of Bosa, who's far more of a tactician, makes for a very dangerous package. And the Niners potentially have the personnel to do that once again.
That's one person I haven't seen anything really about today in anybody's reports is how does Drake Jackson look? Because right, he was super skinny and then put on a bunch of weight after the combine and it was bad weight. And so did he spend these days off to get his body in shape? To me, that's a big thing because, there's a lot of reports out there like Leonard Fournette coming at 260 pounds and all this kind of stuff. We've seen Omenihu and Ebucom, they're workout videos, but they look jacked. They looked ready to rip somebody's head off. And so we'll see how prepared Drake Jackson comes in. I'm still the proponent that he's really going to be more a second half guy, and it's going to be up. Ebucom is going to get first dibs, and it showed that based on the defense today. But it's the first day of camp, so who really knows? But I think Ebucom will have the first dibs, and maybe Jackson's that second half type of guy. But like Aaron Banks said, you're a pro now. You got to treat your body like it, and he has plenty of people around him. I mean, Nick Bosa has 0% body fat, so you definitely have people that you can bounce it off of, and maybe Quadzilla can help you get that body in shape.
Yes, absolutely. You would think that we start the year as we're seeing in training camp now, as you said, where it is Ebucom opposite of Nick Bosa. But anytime he taps out because he is winded on a pass rush down, I would suspect Drake will get some shots early, and it will probably dictate what he does with those few opportunities will probably dictate how many opportunities he gets going forward. I agree. Towards the end of the year, I would expect to see him coming on and potentially contributing significantly more at that point. Just to put it in, because it sounds as if Taste Like Chicken was there at the practice, which was open to folks that wanted to attend. Says, I think Jackson looked huge today, but it was from far away. Tougher to tell, but some firsthand viewing, which we will bring in. Daniel Garcia talking about that similarity between Arden Key and Charles Omenihu potentially contributing on the inside, as we saw today in a NASCAR package, saying Omenihu literally almost same frame and game as Arden Key. That would be great because Arden Key obviously was a key contributor last year. I didn't mean that pun, but it slipped in. I heard myself say it right as I uttered it. All right. For those of you watching now, this is an exciting first day of training camp. If you enjoy the content, hit the like button. Help Randon and I amplify our message here. We're going to transition onto that next topic, which is the news that seems relevant. We already acknowledged Jimmy was in the building, but Debo was there as well. This is the new thing that players are doing, is holding in instead of holding out. They hold out, they get fined X thousands of dollars every single day. If they hold in, they show up to camp, they're there, they report, but they do not participate in the individual or team drills. They're on the sideline getting ready. Now, with the holdout that Debo had during the offseason, I heard Matt Mayoko reference this, and I think he's spot on. The Niners are very dependent on Debo Samuel for offensive production. They do not want anything to happen to him. I think it's fair to say he did not train with the same rigor that we saw last offseason. At least it wasn't evidenced by his own social media posts. The 49ers may want to ensure that they're ramping him up slowly. So even if he had signed a deal, he may not have been on the field with the individual drills and the 11 on 11. They may still have been ramping him up on the sideline, but I'd expect him to remain on the sideline until some deal gets done, and maybe even a few days after that.
Yeah, I think DK Metcalf and the safety for the Chargers is also, I forget his name, it escapes me at the moment, is Derwin James is doing the same thing.
Right.
Is doing the same thing. So yeah, it's the hold in. I mean, for me, who cares, right? Like all these guys are big talent, and so like it doesn't matter if they miss a week of practice without pads. Like really, like what is this about? Like, and then you see multiple reports that a contract is even closer now. So like, who knows how that is, but for me, like the fact that he's there and he's running on the sidelines and he's joking with teammates, and you saw Trey Lance like go over and give him a hug today and say what's up and do all this kind of stuff. Like he's not a leper. Like he's not like, just behind closed walls and we don't see what's going on. Like he's with the team, and so what he wasn't on 11-on-11 state, that doesn't really bother me. Like, is he going to be ready week one? Is he going to be getting paid? That bothers me more. Like if they don't get this deal done and he has to play under the rookie contract and we're like before week one, like this is going on, like that would scare me more than anything else. But as of right now, I'm not worried.
Yeah, I'm not worried either. I expect a deal to come in fairly soon. We did have that reporting by a Carolina beat reporter saying that the deal could be imminent in the next few days and that the guaranteed money is going to be large. That was always my prediction, that Debo's camp, Debo himself, would value guaranteed money above AAV, above some of these other numbers that other contracts had sort of hung their hat on. My guess was Debo would focus on the guarantees. The reporting of that, if it's to be believed, is $70 million guaranteed. That is a big freaking number. I would be very pleased for Debo. John Lynch, hey, he said that the deal is happening. It is coming soon, but that it's not on the immediate horizon. So he seemed to want to temper expectations, whereas this report seems to indicate it could be in the next couple of days. I see this ending sometime over the next week, potentially as soon as the end of this week.
Yeah, I think it's a week without pads. So I would say that within the week, it would seem about right, just because the fact that you want him to get as much work in with Trey and against actual defenses as possible to make, beneficial to the team. But yeah, like I'm not news at the moment. It's not news at the moment until we get closer to the season and he's still not signed. And then we have that kind of problem. But I mean,
that kind of big problem.
Yeah. So, but it's also those things to where, it's still money. They can still be doing that kind of stuff. So who knows, but I'm not worried at the moment. And Debo knows the offense. He's going to be there. He's going to be doing those things. And then the guaranteed money kind of lines it up in the fact that, okay, well now, yeah, we get to use him as a wide back. And, I don't want him running 8 or 9 times between the tackles. That's why they went out and got another running back. But
that's right.
He had, I think he had 54 rushes last year or something like that, in the 50s. If you divide that out equally, because he was more of a runner the second half of the season, that's like 3 to 4 rushes a game, like jet sweep here, jet sweep there, trick play. Like I'd be fine with that, but like I don't want to see him running through the tackles anymore.
That seems like prudent usage to me. I just want to bring this in because it's a longtime visitor that hasn't been here in a while. Jason PDSI says, Rob, I haven't checked in on the show in a minute, but had to come back for your energy and enthusiasm. Let's go. We're fired up here. It is day one of camp. So you've come in for some energy. It is here because we have football, ladies and gentlemen. Chris Royal with the super chat, Sneakerhead here on the channel. The important thing is he's there and able to interact with his teammates, talking about Debo. He seems dialed into the grind, and he'll be fine physically and be ready. That is a positive. I also heard the report of Debo standing there, Trey Lance coming up, giving him a big hug from behind. I take those types of physical signals of bonding and the team being close as very positive signs for a locker room that is getting along and a player that probably feels pretty at home there in San Francisco, even after requesting a trade and having not rescinded it as of yet.
Yeah, I think if you look at it was an interview on Locked On Niners with Tabor Pepper, and I think there was something that he said that the locker room got stronger and stronger as the season went. He goes, winning galvanizes that. But he said this is one of the best locker rooms he's ever been in. So I think people are generally want Debo to get his money. Kittle came out and said it, like, I want him to get paid, whether it's on our team or not. Like, he deserves to feed his family and all this kind of stuff. So I think the teammates they all know what's going on. They don't resent him for being on the sideline and doing what he needs to do. And then I think it also speaks to the fact that, on a side note that's not related to Debo, is if this team starts stacking up wins behind Trey Lance, like, the amount of love that they had for Jimmy G is just going to be the same, if not more, for Trey Lance. Like, I think they're really going to galvanize behind him, as they've already started to do with the joke Instagram from Brandon Aiyuk, like, oh, he only threw 3 passes today and because he had arm fatigue. Like, that stuff's going to be continue to do that, and it's going to be absolutely great. And I'm excited for the season to grow.
By the way, I love there was a little teaser in the Kawakami article, the podcast, wherein they're talking about Trey Lance and Brandon Aiyuk having lunch with Kyle Shanahan, who apparently does not follow social media all that much and was unaware of the arm fatigue kerfluffle that had brewed up, and certainly was unaware of Brandon Aiyuk and the jokes he had made on Instagram. And so they were saying something about it, joking about it. And Kyle's like, what the hell are you guys even talking about? Like, I don't understand why you're talking about this, why you're laughing about it, and what is this arm fatigue BS? And eventually was like, you shouldn't have even brought that up, because I had no idea it was going on. And now I feel like now I've got to address this freaking thing. So it's just, it's humorous that Coach, as young as he is like the old curmudgeon in the locker room because of all these young guys.
Yeah, it's funny, and I think it's prudent. It's probably good that Shanahan's not on social media and doesn't care, right? And he said it, like he says in the offseason, like, when he takes his time off, like, he completely unplugs, and like, really, like, it seems like only John Lynch can really reach him. Like, if any other problems are going on, like he's unavailable, and like, really, takes his time away. So, like, all that BS that we talked about for months, like, he didn't really care. Like, he knew what was going on. He's like, I thought I told you guys emphatically enough at the coaches meeting, but I guess not. Like, so it really goes to show, like, how much a lot of these executives or coaches or whatever, like, absolutely don't give an F about what anybody else thinks. Like, that's what their jobs are for. Like, they're there to win games, and it really doesn't matter what a YouTuber like you or I has to say on the topic.
Well said, my friend. Bringing in a couple of comments. John B. Strider 3006 says, Rob, if he can get his deal done before pads come on, it shouldn't hinder chemistry building with Trey. And 49er Gang 916 believes that is just what's going to happen. He will be paid by the time the pads come on. If I were picking an over-under on that, I'm buying that fact. I'm buying the fact that I believe a Debo deal does get done before the start of the padded practices next week. That only leaves a few days left, but I feel like the deal is imminent.
Yeah.
Excellent. Agreed. Let's transition on to another wide receiver, one that did spend time with Trey Lance. Brandon Aiyuk coming in looking good. I had been going off of the report by Jack Hammer, his explanation of what he saw from Brandon Aiyuk in OTAs, in minicamp, saying that he didn't look bad, but he didn't jump off the page, didn't appear sharp such that you noted him in a positive way in those earlier workouts. I still believe in the fact that Brandon Aiyuk was going to have a breakout season because of the pairing with Trey Lance, because of the time that they're spending in the offseason getting to know one another. Seems like they're freaking BFFs at this point, if you judge by social media. It was only one of his 4 receptions that came from Lance today, but he's looking sharp. I think that those hours spent together training in the offseason will pay off. I'm very optimistic in a Brandon Aiyuk breakout season above and beyond what we've seen from him so far in his career.
Yeah, it's day one, and I have a little bit of positive, negative with this, and I think by all reports he had a good day overall. No catches against our starting corners, and so he's going to be facing starting corners of the league. But I also feel like it's iron sharpens iron. Like, how many teams are going to have a defense to the caliber of the Niners? And this goes for Trey Lance. This goes for everybody on the offense. Like how many defenses are we going to face this year are to the caliber of the Niners that they have to face every single day? So if Aiyuk is learning against Travarius Ward and Emmanuel Mosley day in and day out, iron's going to sharpen iron. Like there's really not a lot of teams. Maybe, I don't know. I don't remember the whole schedule right now, but the Chargers signed JC Jackson and they had a good corner room. So like maybe the Chargers, like, everywhere else, like their corner tandem isn't going to be as good as what he's facing on a daily basis. And so, yeah, he didn't get open against the starters, but that also bodes well as a positive for the starters that they are locked down as what we thought they would be. He mainly burned Ambry Thomas, according to the reports that I read. But the really positive part, I want to read this quote from his presser about coaching the younger guys, is he's starting to step up as a leader as well. And like all reports from Trey Lance is stepping up as a leader and owning the huddle and doing this. Like Aiyuk is doing it for the wide receiver room. And he said on coaching younger wide receivers for the Niners, he said, quote, Sanu was that guy for me. So I felt like I owe it to those guys to give them the info that Sanu gave me and just give them the information that I've learned in my past couple seasons to help them. And so, you're looking at something like, okay, yeah, he's stepping up. Like, it's good. Like, you need youth to take those next steps. Right? You can't just keep signing old guys and expect that, because you need a variety of leadership in the locker room and each position group. And it seems like Aiyuk is coming in there, and hopefully Debo, when he comes back from, like being fully integrated in the offense, that those 2 guys will be the leadership of that wide receiver room and help this young core to be one of the best in the league.
Yeah, you definitely saw that leadership coming from Debo last season while he was having his spectacular statistical breakout, leading the charge with Trent Williams. And hearing this from Brandon Aiyuk does give you that sense that he also, as a veteran, is going to step up within that room. And there's some young talent there, right? You would love to see him take some of those younger players underneath his wing and propel them forward such that they can have a great rookie season, in particular, thinking of Danny Gray there and hoping that he continues to take Danny underneath his wing. Wanted to bring in a comment here. Brian Berquist, the newest sneakerhead on the channel, is making a bold prediction, and I always like to bring in some bold predictions. He says, first game against Chicago, we'll be able to fact check this one quickly. Aiyuk gets a 50-plus yard touchdown from Lance. Brian, I'm guessing if you're wagering on that, you're going to get some good odds, right? I'm thinking that's like at least 250, right? That plus 250 on that one, getting 2.5 to 1. If I'm buying or selling, if I'm setting the odds at plus 250, 2.5 to 1, I'm buying on this. I'll take 2.5 to 1 of Brandon Aiyuk hitting a 50-yarder. I do think that we're going to come out swinging, and Chicago seems like a prime punching bag to have to take it in week 1. If I'm setting the over-under at plus 250, the odds at plus 250, you're going to win 2.5 to 1 if you take that. Yes, he will hit the 50-plus. What are you saying? You buying or selling this one, Randon?
I definitely think there's going to be a deep bomb. His eyes are very hungry when he's looking for wide receivers, and yes. So whether that's Aiyuk or whoever else, I'm buying a deep bomb week 1. The Aiyuk player ad for that odds, you might be able to get better than 250 odds if you're.
You probably would, because that's a pretty
the
significant
freaking to one person. Like that's a pretty. You might get plus 500, maybe plus 400.
I'm taking that for sure.
Yeah,
taking that for sure. Better. We got people asking about Ambry Thomas. We will touch on that when we get to the training camp battles in just a moment. First, we want to get into just a little bit of the Lance watch. We've been talking about it throughout the show. We're always going to be talking about Trey Lance. He's QB1. You got to talk about QB1 at all times. That's just the way in which the NFL regulates all programs talking about football must cover QB1 at all times. But the Lance update, it looked good, according to the reports that came from multiple sources, but specifically Jack Hammer talking about Lance taking what the defense was giving him. So primarily underneath stuff, he was had 2 incompletions. Jack had him as 9 of 11. Many others just counted his 11 on 11 reps, which I think would have put him at 5 for 7 statistically. Obviously, charting the incompletions in preseason is slightly problematic if you take it out of context, but it does give you information to go off of. I like the fact that Trey is continuing his sort of conservative approach. I think this defense is ferocious enough, this special teams is improved enough, and this run game is supportive enough that as long as Trey minimizes the turnovers and can push the ball downfield at times, whether consistently or not, I believe this team is built to win this year with that combination of factors. So I'm okay with this idea of take what the defense is giving you, check down when you need to. I also am encouraged seeing him having success on a called zone read play where he keeps it with his legs and picks up 15 plus before he's touched by the defense, especially when you consider he's going against an elite defense, as you talked about earlier.
Yeah, I'm excited for this. I talked about it with somebody on Twitter, and I said, it's like he has very hungry eyes in the quarterback pocket. Like he's always looking to make the deep throw if he can, but you can't always take those shots. Like he has to learn how to check down. He has to learn how to hit those timing routes. And what is beneficial for us when we talked about, Danny Gray getting drafted was that the box is going to be open more, right? Jimmy Garoppolo, more than any other quarterback in the NFL last year, threw to the middle of the field.
No doubt.
5 to 15 yards. Like that box was packed like a club on New Year's Eve. Like it's just everybody was in there, VIP, whatever, and very rarely
popping bottles.
Very rarely the outside of the field. So like even if Lance is just all the receivers are decoying downfield, it's opening this area up to where he's taking that out. So he's going to get the 50-yard bombs every now and again. But, death from 1,000 cuts is also a nice way to go for a drive because, those 10, 12-minute drives with the defense being a juggernaut that it is just debilitating for a team. Because when you hit a 10-plus yard or 10-plus play drive and then your defense gets a 3 and out and you're back up on the field, like that is just a major, major momentum swing for any team.
That's a fact. Swan Song, Sneakerhead here on the channel, pointing out first day was all underneath stuff. And that's what I heard as well, other than a deep pass from Nate Sudfeld and one from Brock Purdy at the end of practice to Jordan Matthews in the tight end room. Other than those 2 deep passes, it was primarily underneath stuff from all the quarterbacks. And the completion percentage was good from all. I do see What's Good's comment as well. And I did see this on Twitter. I've not heard a reputable source that I follow talk about Trey's inaccuracy. I'd be interested to hear where that is coming from because I certainly read up on the reporters from The Athletic, Jack Hammer, Rohan was out there. I know a bunch of people, Jordan Elliott was out there, Brad Graham, and everyone that I listened to, read up on, all mentioned that, yes, it was underneath stuff, so nothing terribly impressive. But as far as accuracy, no criticisms, no statements of Trey looked inaccurate today. But this isn't the first time I've seen someone say there were some sources that said he was inaccurate.
I mean, we all know there's haters out there, and somebody's going to want to be overly critical of him.
Yep.
Right. Just like everybody on the other end that don't like Jimmy Garoppolo are overly critical of him on certain points. It's going to happen all year. It's going to happen when he throws his first pick. It's going to happen, whenever, was this person really like, okay, he was inaccurate as the ball. Yeah, the ball was caught, but it was behind the wide receiver. Like, is he getting that in depth into it? Or is it just clickbait because Trey Lance is a hot topic? Like, it's going to get you views. And so, like, it just really depends. I don't give an F. I really don't. Like, it's the first day. Like, 9 for 11 is good against the first team offense. This makes me more excited about the defense, to be honest with you. Like, if they're only giving up underneath stuff, and Aiyuk is like, Fred Warner is just a beast out there. Like, he's such a pest. Like, I hate going against him. And like our defense is going to be mean, like, and it's going to be great. And I think that you're going to be seeing us smack people around the field all year long, and just having an elite secondary, which I've been clamoring for forever because coverage over pass rush, in my opinion. But I know they work together. You don't need to blow me up in the comments. But like, I just saying, like, I'm so excited, like how locked down, like Emmanuel Mosley is a lockdown corner. Like, he's very underrated. And Travarius Ward is just crazy good in man-to-man. And so I love it, especially in the hard stretch of our schedule when we're facing guns like Herbert and Mahomes and all these guys. Like, it's going to be nice to have those corners, and early rewards is that it's something really good for us.
Yeah, absolutely. I see this as a positive, much like the reports coming out in 2011 and 2019, where you started to worry about the offense because you were like, what? It seems like the defense is really just kicking their ass all the time. And then lo and behold, you get into the season, you're like, oh, it's because they're dominant as hell. Like, there's a reason they were whooping our offense's ass every single day, because they're a phenomenal freaking defense. And I'm hoping that's going to be the case here as well. I want to bring in Around Town Collective here. Says, love the show, guys. First and foremost, thank you very much. We love compliments. Always a fan of that. Do you think Kyle and Lynch are finally giving Lance the hype he deserves? It's taken some time for them to publicly give the compliments. I was waiting for this. I thought it was very important for them to come out unequivocally and put their support behind Trey Lance. I believe that has been done now. I don't think you're going to continue to hear too much praise from Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch, because I just don't see Kyle Shanahan being that type, right? No, but it'll come from his teammates.
Yeah.
I think you'll see the hype from his teammates. And to me, that's the real deal anyways, when your peers start to talk you up.
Yeah, Kyle's very matter of fact. Like, he just says what's going on. Like, yeah, he'll probably be like, yeah, Trey looked good today. He made these throws. Boom, that's it. Like, it's good. The hype machine's going to be everywhere else, and it's really not Kyle's or Lynch's job to hype up his quarterback. It's not their job to do that. Like, it's their job to win football games. Like, and so, like, they made him the unequivocal starter. Good, that's all I needed, and all the hype can come from his play on the field.
Yeah, absolutely. If he puts out that beautiful play, the hype will sell itself. You won't need Kyle Shanahan to say that. And Around Town Collective came back in to just be kind with the super chat, and I appreciate that. Just want to say thank you. We got other comments to get to as well, but we want to talk about the training camp battles, and this will be an ongoing segment that Randon and I hit each week to update those training camp battles that we called out last week that we are interested in keeping our eyes on. And so it will be about the offensive line, the running back room, the tight end 2 position. How's that breaking out? The nickel corner position, strong safety, and the edge opposite of Bosa. We got additional information on each of those from day one. Small sample size, but hey, it is a sample size. We're going to use it. So here's the offensive line. This comes from Jack Hammer specifically, saying Kyle Shanahan mentioned yesterday there would be a competition at center during training camp. You can read this glorious content on the Santa Rosa Press Democrat website from Jack Hammer. He says, as a result, Daniel Brunskill is working in the position with the second unit. As a result of this move, rookie Spencer Burford took the first team reps at right guard on day one. The first unit also saw Colton McKivitz lined up at left tackle instead of Trent Williams, who didn't participate in practice today. And then Jalen Moore stepped in at right tackle for McGlinchey. So a lot of things to unpack there. Primarily, what I'm going to take away from it, Trent Williams missed a day because of a personal reason. Nothing to see there. Colton McKivitz stepping in at left tackle is something to monitor as either the first guy to step in at left tackle or maybe the second rotational piece, because you got to look at Jalen Moore being used at right tackle simultaneously. I'm thrilled about the idea that Mike McGlinchey was out there, even if he didn't participate in 100% of the practice. The simple fact that he started practice at right tackle and was a little bit lighter, as reported, but heavier than his 2020 season, which sort of lives in infamy, where he dropped below 300 pounds. I'm taking a positive from that. And then I just find it highly intriguing that you've got Burford there at right guard and a competition between Brendel and Brunskill for center. That leaves me a little skeptical as to how the Niners actually feel about Jake Brendel. I thought he was going to be the clear-cut a first string guy getting most of those reps. And now that you're seeing a little divvying with Daniel Brunskill, I have to wonder if that's not going to be a real open competition. Maybe the left guard and right guard are less of a competition, and center is where that competition really flourishes.
Yeah, I think the number one competition is going to be at left tackle with Trent Williams missing today. it's McKivitz' job. I think Trent Williams said McKivitz would have been the next guy up next year or last year if he would have missed the NFC
right,
Championship
that Rams game. Yeah.
So it might just be a previous, like, okay, like he's the vet for that job. That's what's going on. Who knows if Jalen Moore is really going to be their swing tackle. That's going to be a battle to see who's going to be the third man up, regardless of position. We know it's going to be a carousel, and I think this is going to be the true battle, like the center and the right guard and what's going on. And because this is a position has to be earned, right? I mean, you have to be able to earn that because that's a huge position. And Trey Lance is going to have a say in it, like who he feels better with and what's going on. But right now, I'm really not too concerned about it because the big thing with offensive defensive line, like there's no pads, like there's no leverage, there's no nothing. You're not getting hit. You're not pushing people out of the way in a real manner. And so until we start putting pads on, I think they're probably going to rotate both of these guys in to get looks because right now it's just terminology and walkthroughs and that type of thing. But when the pads go on and you're going to see which guys get pushed around and which guys don't. And those guys are going against Armstead. Those guys are going against Kinlaw. Right. And so you're going to see who really holds up to that wear and tear when the pads go on and hitting it for real.
Yeah, a real case of iron sharpening iron, because that is freaking iron along that defensive line if you're going up against that. 420 Savage coming in to say, Burford at right guard is what I was hoping for. Let's go. I'm also excited about that. You had Scott McLuhan, who was a great talent evaluator for the 49ers for a period of time, dealt with his own personal demons, left the team, but clearly had some skills in his talent evaluation. He called out Burford as a second-round talent as he saw him. The Niners landed Burford in the 4th round. It would be phenomenal if you had a high upside rookie lock down the right guard position, therefore allowing for Brunskill and Brendel to again, iron sharpening iron, the best man coming out and the other being a top backup for that position. That feels like a fairly ideal situation if Burford can grab that spot. Got a couple of super chats that I want to bring in before we transition to that running back room. 49ers throwback saying it's good that Trey Lance has improved. I think the quarterbacks were working on short passes, and that's good for Lance. Our defense will make him better. Back to the iron sharpening iron. And if you're looking at Trey Lance needing to improve somewhere, I do think I want him to be more Jimmy Garoppolo-esque in some ways. I do want him to improve his short game, to improve the way in which he manages this offense. If I have to give Jimmy credit for the things he did well, that's where I'm starting. Those over the middle passes, the short passes, putting the ball right on the receiver, allowing them to rack up those yards after catch. If Trey can do that and provide the deep ball, forget about it, man. Forget about it.
Yeah, I mean, just the threat, right? We talked about it multiple times last season, the quote from Aaron Rodgers, who was saucy day one of camp, coming in looking like Nick Cage from Con Air or whatever.
That was phenomenal. Annie Agar with the great edit there, throwing in that reference. So good.
And so, but he said, like, sometimes we just take shots downfield to keep the defense honest. Like
right.
the threat of him being able to throw outside the numbers and throw downfield is going to leave all those areas in the middle of the field open. But he's going to have to hit those wide. He's going to have to hit those guys. Like, it's going to be there. And so they're just going to have even more room for the Yak brothers to go wild. They're going to have more room to do all these kind of things. And then when they start creeping in, you're going to burn them deep. And so, yeah, he's going to have to hit these, and it's good that they're throwing it. Like, I don't need, like, okay, yeah, I love Trey Lance. I like that he's able to throw the 50, yard bombs. But in reality, like, how many of those are there per season? Like, maybe one a game and 2 a game at most. Most of the time, it's those short passes that are taken downtown because of the fact that, the receiver makes a play or something like that. But the threat of throwing deep keeps the defense honest, and that's what you're going to be seeing for a lot of teams. They're going to be afraid to get beat deep by Aiyuk, and you're going to see a lot of this underneath stuff. And I'm glad that Trey Lance is taking it. He's taking the smart play rather than forcing balls where he shouldn't.
Yes, I would much rather him work within the scheme of the offense, take what the defense is giving them, count on the fact that this is an elite defense. It is a phenomenal run game, and those things will propel us to wins in and of themselves, so long as we don't turn the ball over on offense. Kyle Sullivan coming in with another super chat. Huge fan, brothers. Appreciate that, Kyle. Says, considering we're playing the AFC West this year, what do you think the 49ers record will be, and will they make the playoffs? I've gone through, did this exercise specifically with Jack Hammer. I want to do it again at some point with the two of us, Randon, because we'll obviously get more information as preseason progresses. There will be key injuries that will affect the 49ers, hopefully not, but they will be affected by other teams experiencing some injuries. Things will shift, and we will have more information where it's relevant to make the predictions. I went through and came out in what I believe to be a fairly conservative estimate at the 49ers coming out with 11 wins, 6 losses. I think 11-6 makes the playoffs. I'm sticking with that until I do a more formal, closer to the season review of the schedule. But I anticipate I will come out there, maybe even a game or two more in the win column. I think the 49ers are poised for the playoffs. Randon, how do you see it right now?
I think there's a wide margin for this season. And I think you're looking at the strength of schedule is pretty tough, but it's also tough for the rest of the people in our division as well. Right. And so like the quarterback battles, it's a quarterback driven league. And so in any of those matchups, if the game is close, you can reasonably expect that the ghost of Russell Wilson is going to be competitive, and all these other quarterbacks that you could name. Carr. I think the Raiders will be a lot better than a lot of people expect. Patrick Mahomes is a guy. So it's just, I think that you're looking at anywhere from, hey, if Trey Lance doesn't progress as much as we think, and it's all defense and run game, they still probably could win 8 or 9 games. And then you have upwards of 11 and 12. Does it make the playoffs? I don't know. Like right now, the Arizona Cardinals paid, Kyler Murray, but put a clause in there that he has to study film a certain amount of hours. Does that sound like a guy that's dedicated? Like the Rams, are starting the season off, with arm fatigue for Matt Stafford and some guys on the pup and stuff like that. So who knows? Will Allen Robinson be a ghost of himself? Will he ever regain form? There's a lot of question marks in our division, depending on who the quarterback of the Seahawks is. Their team could be decent enough to sneak some games away from people here and there. I think we are playoff bound, just because I do believe in Trey Lance, and that's just my opinion. And I think the defense and the run game are so good that the defenses are going to shut some people out regardless of how good our offense plays. If you just put a gun in my head just to give you one number, I'd say 10 wins, and that's good enough to make the playoffs.
Yeah, I think that would be right there on the cusp, right? They might be within a tiebreaker of making the playoffs if they end up at 10-7, as they did last year. They were at 10-7 and made the playoffs. All right, let's keep transitioning through some of those observations of the camp battles in talking about the running back room. Really, the only notable piece here for me was that Elijah Mitchell came in as number 1, but then behind him, as we trailed off into the second, third team, it actually went to Jeff Wilson Jr., then JaMycal Hasty, then Trey Sermon, then TDP. And so you have the two younger backs, not named Elijah Mitchell, who was obviously proved himself last year and earned that first role. You see them at the end of the depth chart there, and it will be fascinating when we put the pads on as to whether by that point or at that point, one or both of the younger backs climb that depth chart. Because I imagine a situation wherein JaMycal Hasty is not just on the bubble, but on the wrong side of it, and that it probably comes down to a decision between Jordan Mason and Jeff Wilson Jr. for that fourth running back on the team, with Juice being the fifth. So I think TDP, Trey Sermon, and Elijah Mitchell are locks, but admittedly, seeing Trey Sermon still fourth on the depth chart, he may still have to earn his way onto this roster. The simple fact that he's a third-round pick from last year's draft might not be enough with how deep this team is.
See, this is where it doesn't make any sense to me. And I know it's the first thing in practice, but it kind of makes me frustrated. The fact that you spend 2 third-round picks on both these running backs, and they're getting the least amount of work. What is that?
Yep.
And even with the least amount of work, Ty Davis Price had the best run of the day.
He did.
Where I heard that it was an audible slap when the guy, when he hit the whoever was trying to tackle them this year. But just like every other position, when the pads come on, that's when the running backs really can make some climb, because
that's right.
TDP is coming in there to hit people. He ain't coming in there to move around. And like you're going to
He's a
see
big
those
boy.
types of things. Yeah. Trey Sherman's been putting on a lot of work. And I mean, it's all tapes and everything like that. But I think he had a 100-yard game in his only game that he started. Like he still looks good. Like, and so for me, like you bring both these guys in, like, yeah, the playbook is supposed to be one of the most difficult to master. Like, why aren't you giving him the most reps to be able to master this? Like, Ty Davis Price is making the roster. It's a 3rd-round pick. Like you assume Trey Sermon's making the roster with the capital that they give. So like, why are we giving, no offense to Hasty, and Jeff Wilson Jr. already knows all these plays. So why are we giving Hasty all this pub? Like it makes no sense to me. It really doesn't.
I agree. I think you're looking at someone in Hasty that has cleared waivers before and likely would clear waivers again. Could probably stash him on the practice squad there. 420 Savage calling out correctly. Sermon grew bigger muscles, which sounds good. We shall see. I'm with Brian on this one, that I do think the running back room is lit. I believe it will be a productive group. Another group that we were keeping our eyes on is the tight end 2 group. Obviously, George Kittle, number 1 out there in your playbook and in your hearts. But then you have Charlie Warner, who would have probably come in as the second tight end, had certainly earned that role towards the end of last season, but has core muscle surgery and therefore is out. Now, that's can be viewed as a positive because it gives additional reps to this other group of tight ends that are fighting for it. But I don't know if pleased is the right word. I'm still rooting for Ross Dwelley, even though I've predicted he won't make the team. He did handle the second team reps for the tight end room. So it went Kittle to Dwelley and then the whole glut of other players. Tyler Kroft coming in immediately after Ross Dwelley. That would signal that, again, it's early in camp. All those players will have a chance to unseat Ross Dwelley, but it would seem he'd be the favorite to be one of the 3 tight ends that makes this roster.
Yeah, I don't know how far or how long Warner's supposed to be out, but we've talked about it ad nauseum. Either money talks or usually the incumbent gets the first reps, right? So money talks for Shavarius Ward. He's the guy. He's getting that. Like he doesn't have to earn. He earned it by them signing the contract. But Dwelley's been on the team. He knows the playbook a lot longer. Like it seems like he's going to get every opportunity to make it, and they brought in Kroft to push him. Yeah. So we'll see how that works out. I didn't really see any big plays from any tight ends that I read outside of Jordan Matthews when it was Purdy. But I don't expect him to make the roster. So it just really another question mark here for this. And, I think a lot of it comes with the run game, right? I mean, they ask so much of the blocking. So, are you going to get like Charlie Warner's not the best tight end, like his hands and all this kind of stuff like that. But he gets a lot of playing time because he's a great run blocker.
Exactly.
I think if you look at the best way to make this team for Kroft or for Dwelley is to execute when the pads come on.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. And let's get it. Talking about Dwelley, says he's got the best hands. I don't get it. In preseason, he's able to put up those numbers, but just has not been able to replicate that success in games in the regular season and has had the opportunity to do so. To Randon's point, Charlie Warner overtook Ross Dwelley during the season, not because of his hands, but because of his ability to block. And that is something that will absolutely be cherished within the 49ers offense anytime you're playing for Kyle Shanahan. Flipping over to the defense, again, keeping these short because we don't have a whole lot to go off at this point. But again, an ongoing process. We will keep updating you on these camp battles. Talking about one that also feels up in the air, not settled, where the first guy is a clear-cut favorite, to me at least, and that's the nickel corner position. One thing of note is that Diamador Lenore, small sample size again, but was not taking reps at the nickel spot, was primarily operating on the later defenses on the outside as an outside corner. So you had Darqueze Dennard taking the first string reps and then Sam Womack coming in after that. These are the 2 I've got my eye on as far as the 49ers landing a starting nickel, unless they go a route where they get cute, wherein they slide Emmanuel Mosley inside or Jason Verrett is healthy enough to play. And they say, you know what? Nickel only plays about 60% of the snaps. We don't think you can handle a full season of snaps anyway, Jason, as you're coming back from injury. Why don't we give you a ride at the nickel position? I could see that being the case, but I think they're probably hoping Darqueze Dennard or Sam Womack really claims this spot.
Yeah, I my bold prediction, I think a couple episodes, was that Womack would be the starter week 1 at the nickel position. But I think the Niners are more hoping that Ambry Thomas shows that he can be a backup outside corner. And if they need to move Mosley inside, like they could do that too. Like the versatility, like I'm not counting on Jason Verrett for anything this year. Like
Yeah,
any sort of snaps that we get from him, great. Like if
I
he's
think
all
that's a
pro, but
good policy to have.
yeah, realistically, like you look at like, okay, like you expect a jump from Ambry Thomas. So far, week one or day one, not so great. Things can change, right? I mean, it's just one day at camp. Again, when pads go on, it's easier to get your hands on and jam people at the line of scrimmage and do all those things. And so, does that make his job better? Like he's known as more of a physical corner. So like that's his MO. Emmanuel Mosley and Javarius Ward didn't have a problem locking up wide receivers. Maybe they're more physically gifted. I don't know. But I think that showing that Womack was there is a good promise for why they drafted him. But for me, it's like, okay, the cornerback room, like people are going to miss time eventually,
Right.
whether it will be one game or two. The horrible day by Ambry Thomas is not like concerning for me because I guess it's one day, but you would hope that he like builds on his end of his last season rather than dropping down to start camp.
Yeah, and people brought that up, right? John B. Strider 3006 says, Rob, I'm sure you'll cover this soon, but thoughts on Ambry getting burned badly by guys who won't make the 53. Let's get it. Saying heard Ambry struggled big time today. I'm not terribly concerned about this, similar to what you just stated there, Randon, in that it is just one day. But you could anticipate, hey, sophomore slump is a very real thing. What that, again, reminds me is I'm just grateful that the Niners invested in this room in totality, that they brought in additional bodies because they paid big money for Charvarius Ward and they still have Emmanuel Mosley in there. They have 2 starting caliber quarterbacks. If Ambry Thomas does struggle, then really you're just limited in your 3 cornerback sets when teams go 4 wide, right? When you need to bring in an additional corner in addition to your nickel that comes in those positions. So it's too early to say that this defines Ambry Thomas's sophomore season, but it is a reminder to me that I'm grateful the Niners didn't take the Akello Witherspoon route and just say, hey, we saw vast improvement by this rookie towards the end of the season. We'll just pencil him in as a starter and assume that he's going to pick up where he left off. Because as of the first day of training camp, he didn't. He has plenty of time to turn that around. But when I look at the depth in the cornerback room, I feel very secure that Ambry has time to find himself again in his sophomore season.
Yeah, you're going to see some people cut from this cornerback room that might go and walk on and start for other teams or make that their 53 and not get put on their practice squad. So like it could be very much so the fact that it's super deep and I like the competition. And just like we can't get overhyped, it's fun to get overhyped because we want our team to win and we want, Trey Lance to throw for 5,000 yards and all this kind of stuff like that, Super Bowl, host 6. But, people are going to have bad days out there. People are going to have good days. Still the first week, there's plenty of times that we've seen in Niners history, like AJ Jenkins, like be this hype guy when there's no pads on. As soon as pads come on, like you never see him catch a football. So like it just, you really got to be even keel sometimes as much as it's fun to press the panic button or the hype train whistle.
Yes, it is fun to get on the hype train. All right, let's talk about a position that seems a little more settled. These last 2 training camp battles, we're talking strong safety and edge opposite of Bosa. Both of these seem to have clear-cut favorites. I would assume that they are going to have the best shot to lay claim to this position. Strong safety, Huff got the first team reps as expected. This one doesn't feel like much of a competition. It seems really like it's Huff's job to lose. I've said that repeatedly. What I saw today in the reporting from training camp gave me nothing to contradict that fact.
No, out there, I reported the first guy out on there. He out on the field and getting some extra work in and all that kind of stuff like that. Like he's taking it seriously. He's also coaching the guys when he's not on the field. Like to have a guy in his second year as a 5th rounder coaching people and knowing a lot of the defense to be able to make those, like feel confident about voicing his opinion on the field that way is great stride. And it becomes a physical freak, man. Like he really is. And like, as soon as he learns how to play that position, we were saying last year, we saw him turn it on. And so, man, that defensive line could be just so stacked. And so like to have him there, like being the starter there, like that's what I thought he was going to be the incumbent Doesn't mean that Kamoko Toure or Drake Jackson or all these guys won't get theirs, but it's looking like he will. And I hope he takes advantage of it. I hope he is the beast that he was at the end of the year, because I know he's like squatting like 7,000 pounds and breaking bars and doing all this kind of stuff. So if he can put it together mentally and learn the position and sack some quarterbacks, this team could be pretty fun.
He's a physical freak. The 49ers need to have someone hold it down opposite of Bosa. He's being paid as if he will hold down that position. So if you follow the money, you would certainly put Ebukam there as the favorite to hold it down. And if Drake Jackson can come on throughout the season, you can then spell him with a dedicated pass rusher who seems to be that speed edge rusher you want to maybe come in on third downs. It gives the 49ers, they have a lot of options, but I'm with you that Ebukam will hold down this position unless someone comes in and actually manages to unseat him, whether that's a Kamoko Toure, Charles Omenihu. I'm now wondering if he'll get enough options at the exterior edge rusher, or whether they do view him as a replacement for Arden Key. I have a hard time believing that Kerry Hyder would lock down that second role. So I see Kamoko Toure, Samson Ebukam, and it would take a miracle, but a resurgent Drake Jackson as maybe being the only three that feel like they could lock that down. And it feels like if I'm handicapping this, I'm giving a heavy favorite to Samson Ebukam.
Yeah, and it was well earned towards the end of the season, and hope he runs and builds upon that.
Yeah, exactly. And we will build upon this show because training camp continues, and we will be back next week giving you more updates continually. Randon, do you have anything coming up on hockey royalty in the near future?
We're doing an episode every week now, so and then a guest here and there. So it's kicking off. I mean, averaging 500 downloads per podcast. We had our first live show hit over like 1,500 views, which is huge, or 1,700 now, which is huge for us considering we only have 200 and something subscribers. So to get that many views off of one video, fantastic. So we're just growing. We're growing. We're loving it. Trying to get some merch and stuff out there. Really enjoying it. Right now, it's kind of a dead period since free agency, and we don't really have any cap space. So free agency ended for us. We have 2 guys that are RFAs that they need to sign. But other than that, the World Juniors is coming up, and just watching some U20s prospects go out there and play for the country. It's going to be pretty cool.
Nice. If you want to catch all that action, check back in 5 minutes. I almost never forget to do this, but I realize now as I'm saying it, I have forgotten to put that in the description of the video. Within 5 minutes of ending this video, the links for Randon will be there. You can follow him on Twitter. You can go subscribe to Cerberus Sports on YouTube, and all the information for hockey royalty will be there as well. If you're still here watching and you enjoyed the show, as I know Randon and I did, please hit that like button. Consider subscribing on your way out. Hit the bell notification so that you know when we go live each week. Every now and then we get one of these late starts, right? Where it was too hot at Levi's Stadium. We didn't want to be in the Eastern Stand, so we delayed for a couple of hours, and you guys all loved it as a result. The chat was lit today. Brandon, as always, thank you so much for being on with me, my friend.
Hey, it's always a pleasure. I'm excited for football to be back, and I'm just pumped about what the season holds. It's going to be a good one. Going to go catch a couple of away games this year. Hopefully see you for the first time in person, my man, in Atlanta.
ATL.
And just excited.
As am I, and I'm in lockstep with Raphael 5629ers. It was a great show. I'll be back on tomorrow with the Sneakerhead call-in show at 5 p.m. I will see Randon here next week. We will probably be back at the regular time. You can always follow me on Twitter if you want to see those updates at The Left Shoe. Until then, cheers, faithful.